Hello everyone. For my analysis, I chose to do the Lick Quartet by David Bruce, specifically the second movement entitled Antonin's Lick. For those of you unfamiliar, the lick is a joke within the jazz community, especially during improvisation, and it's often seen as referenced during solos. Here it is, and here's what it sounds like. It's very recognizable, and it's seen in a lot of things. It should be noted that the title of this movement, Antonin's Lick, is a reference to Antonin Dvorak, whose American Quartet inspired this piece. The first thing I wanted to focus on was Bruce's dissonance treatment in this movement, specifically how he handles things that would traditionally be considered dissonant in the context of counterpoint. The first thing I want to point out is that Bruce uses 6/4 chords all over the place. So clearly he's okay with fourths sounding from the bass up, and he doesn't consider that to be a dissonance because Bruce considers himself to be a tonal composer. So within the context of harmony, that's fine. Next, another thing that Bruce does that's a little bit different than most contrapuntal composers is, in this movement specifically, he uses a lot of internal octaves. I'll show you a clip later that has 4 or 5 octaves on the downbeat in a row, which normally is avoided due to like emptiness. These internal octaves can be seen on the beat of the last 2 measures of this clip. The next thing I want to touch on is how Bruce uses unprepared dissonances as color tones in his piece. There's often times where there's unprepared dissonances that we would traditionally consider to not be contrapuntally correct. However, since Bruce is a modern composer, he's operating outside of just plain common practice tonality. He's also using expanded harmonies, extensions, and even non-triadic harmonies. So due to this expanded tonality and non-triadic systems, sometimes Bruce uses unprepared dissonances that make sense in the context of this piece. In this clip, notice the unprepared tritone and even minor second on a strong beat in measure 439. Next, I'm going to show you an example from the piece that both covers Bruce's dissonance treatment as well as his balance between the harmonic and linear considerations. In this selection, Bruce is clearly focused on the linear combination of line rather than the vertical harmonic structure. So in that clip, if you were to analyze it vertically, you would notice it's very dissonant when the 3 voices are sounding together. However, listening to it, it doesn't sound that out of place or uncharacteristic because all 3 voices are imitating each other chromatically. However, overall, I would say Bruce focuses more on a vertical consideration than a linear consideration. Throughout the piece, there's generally a main melody with an accompaniment part. So due to this, in the accompany parts are very chordal. There's an even harmonic rhythm. There's color tone, sure, but it's analyzable. It's not atonal, it's definitely tonal. This next clip that you'll see, there's an especially good example of how Bruce focuses vertically rather than horizontally. In this, there's a clear melody in the first violin, and the other lower string parts are performing chordal moments along with the downbeat to the melody, often in double or triple stops. The next thing I want to focus on is Bruce's use of contrapuntal techniques throughout this movement. The most obvious of these is the imitation. Bruce uses imitation both harmonically and melodically. Harmonically, Bruce uses this as the accompaniment parts are tonally imitating each other, arpeggiating chords. This is a very common technique or texture that he uses throughout the entire piece. Melodically, there's often times where the second violin will imitate the first violin, normally offset by at least a beat. In this next clip, I'll show you a place where Bruce uses imitation harmonically. In this next clip, I'll show you a part where Bruce uses very tight chromatic imitation. Another characteristic feature of this work is its change in texture. In the beginning of the piece, it starts off with a very nice lilting melody in the first violin, followed by an arpeggiated texture in the lower strings. However, this changes as you get to the chromatic sections, the chordal sections, and the static sections. We've already seen both the chromatic section and the chordal section, so I won't show those again. Now, I'll show you a short clip from the static section, where other voices play against a very sparse pedal. To me, the change in texture at letter I is one of the most striking movements of the piece. Because before that, we've had this constant driving triplet figure due to the meter. But here, we kind of lose that sense. We lose the sense of bar line and things get slowed down a lot. And the texture also gets a lot less busy. There's ostinatos first in the second violin, and then second in the first violin, the tongue twister. And it's definitely a different feeling. Now, another important thing to note is that not everyone's playing all the time. While in the bigger sections, yes, all four voices are definitely playing, there's definitely times where it gets even down to one voice. In one part, it's only the cello playing, and it gradually builds back up. But this means that Bruce isn't afraid to take voices out and add them as he sees fit. Another important thing to discuss is that not all four voices are created equal in this piece. Throughout the treatment of the piece, we can clearly see that the first violin is considered to be the most important voice. This is because it has the melody, the majority of the movement. However, there are times where the second violin, or even the cello, take over the melody. Sorry, viola. So because there's this hierarchy of voices with respect to their relative importance, this isn't a strictly contrapuntal work. Bruce, without a doubt, uses contrapuntal techniques in this work. However, there's not an independence of voice. There's not all four voices are equally important. So because of this, it isn't strictly contrapuntal. The overarching structure of this movement is ABA. There's an introduction and a theme starting in the beginning, and there's several links and other themes, but nothing's really developed. Then there's a B section, which starts with that static section, and following that, there's development of the theme. That we go to different keys, we hear development of the theme, and it's a development. Finally, in the last A section, it's really an A prime, because the theme is presented, but it's presented in variations until the very end, where we hear the theme in its entirety. Thank you guys for listening to my analysis of the second movement of the Lick Quartet by David Bruce. If you guys are interested, you can go check it out on YouTube. There's a full-length recording of the Dover Quartet playing his work. Thanks, guys.